When did Americans lose the British accent? Off rip, I low-key had no idea that, we ascended from being British. I'm not gonna lie to you. But is it just me or I always thought that George Washington was British? Like is that just me? Like I literally always assumed that he was British because he just looks British. The white hair, the way he dressed and everything. But apparently we originated from being British. And then I'm very curious on how we got from, tea parties and being polite and all that to this. Yeah, it's very curious. So let's
Maybe you've never thought of it this way, but colonial Americans spoke and behaved far closer to British than to American. Many early Americans still considered themselves British in the colonial days, hence patriots versus loyalists. But when did the American brand actually start?
when did we start being like America and the fucking bald eagle and all this shit? Like, I'm very curious.
We stop bowing, start shaking hands, and stop speaking British. Let's address a myth first. The American accent isn't some sort of new invention. It's actually an old one. In the 1700s, British English was not the Queen's English that we think of now. The British.
That is fucking gruel. And the crazy thing is that there's dead ass people out there who are like, oh, that's some fucking good ass food right there. I can't do a British accent, but yeah, that's slop. Like, oh my, that looks like I just threw up.
Sounds right. I'm sorry. Anyway, instead, British English was rhotic.
Holy shit, you look like a fucking double R, bro.
Meaning they pronounce the R in words like hard, bar, and car. At the back end of the American Revolution, around the mid to late 1700s, the London elites began practicing non-rhoticity to sound more sophisticated and avoid association with the ungrateful younger brothers overseas, yes, but mostly to distance themselves from the poor, low-born people around them. And this is
You're telling me that we were changing our accents just so we didn't sound like poor people because we're too rich for that shit? Yo, that is some that is some crazy shit right there. I'm not gonna lie.
really neat. The Americans were new and demanding independence, so you'd think they would be the ones to quickly change the way they speak, but that's just not the case. Americans didn't develop a new accent. We just kept the one we had and gradually changed it while England moved on considerably sooner and far more
But if you're all talking with kind of a British accent, I understand how you could lose an accent because you go to a different place. Like, say, you know what I mean? Like a British person comes to America for fucking 20 years. They literally might just start getting an American accent just from the people around them, because that's how you get your accent, from the people around you and how they talk. So how would them being British and then how would that did their accent slowly fade away or something? Like, that wouldn't make any sense, because then wouldn't British people not be talking like British people now? They would have just faded away. So how does it make sense? I don't know.
Intentionally.
Or I just
another way. Before and during the Revolution, the average redcoat and the average patriot were speaking with similar accents. So in practice, the American accent kind of froze many of the English sounds of the 1700s. King George III of back then probably sounded a lot more American than King Charles. Ooh. Somebody please give me a good explanation as to why this portrait looks the way it does. We stayed Elizabethan and they went posh. And this is really important as far as class and national themes. In the US, liberty and equality were massive virtues and still are now. And not to say that those virtues are not present in the UK today, but there's a clear discrepancy in that birthright hierarchy still stands as a major recognized institution. And we can't skip over the demographic changes here either, as the early American West, for example, was a melting pot of German, Irish, and Scandinavian influences, while Great Britain just remained far more homogenous.
Damn, German. Oh, that's Wild West.
For much longer. But there's more here. With speech changes comes reading and writing changes. Have you ever wondered why Americans and Brits, Americans and Brits, there we go, have different spellings for words like color?
Yeah, they do have different spellings for words like mum, because that's just how the way they say it, though. They say mum, but they spell it with a U, but I don't know.
Of course you have. Look, I'm in your brain already, which I'm sure is massive and juicy, lots of wrinkles, yeah. For this spelling thing, we can thank Noah Webster. Yes, that Webster. He thought that as long as Americans used British spelling, they were still mentally enslaved to the crown. He wanted an American.
So we completely changed our words around because we didn't want to be we didn't want to associate with them. We wanted to be our own people, so we completely changed the way that we write words down. That's why they're spelled differently than people in England. Yo, that is low-key some weird shit right there. I'm not gonna lie to you, bro. You're so not wanting to be involved with like English people that you're like changing the complete way that you spell words, like dog.
Language that was as lean and efficient as the people. And many of his suggestions gained massive traction in the late 18th century and stuck around till today. He chopped the U out of honor. He flipped the RE in theater to theater. These seem perfectly normal to the average American nowadays, but get this, there were more rejected changes than accepted ones. I'll show you a few, and I think you'll really like this. He wanted to change tongue to tongue.
Yeah, that's probably how a fucking idiot spells tongue.
Believe to believe.
Dog. Believe to believe. Yo, dog. We would actually seem like fucking idiots if that's how we spelled it. Well, obviously, I'm saying that because that's how you don't spell believe at all. That's how I would assume I would spell believe if I'm not paying attention and I'm just illiterate. So, but like, yeah, it seems just so stupid.
Machine to machine.
This literally just seems like he was wanting to change it to a more simplified way of how you would spell something. Like how somebody that doesn't know how to spell would try to spell a word. That's how he's putting it. It's just literally would just make it seem like the most dumbest people ever.
Soup to soup.
That one's whatever.
Daughter to daughter.
Nah, bro.
Head to head.
It's just oversimplifying the words to make it seem like how somebody that doesn't know how to spell at all would spell the word. That's literally just what it is.
Personal favorite. Women to women. And I really like this one, but because first,
women, just spelling it the exact way you hear it, bro. Like,
it's just funny, all right. And secondly, it cleans up that weird pronunciation dilemma we have with the singular and plural sounding nearly identical when read literally, which was a problem even back then. Webster's solution was practical, and guess what? Most Americans still vocalize women just as Webster had it spelled. But his superior spelling was ultimately rejected because people found the spelling to be too ugly. Let me know in the comments, which alternative Webster spelling should we reintroduce today? And tell me how.
None of them. They're literally all just a more like simplified version of actual words, like how you would assume you would spell them if you were illiterate. That's literally just what they are.
We should fix this women problem. Oh man, that sounds bad, but you know what I mean. The point here is that the speech changing along with the spelling was an attempt at a psychological breakaway from the British, and it worked. Sooner or later, Webster was able to rewire the American brain to see Britishness as an extra, unnecessary piece of baggage.
So he slowly changed the way we talk over time. I think they, on purpose, basically. That's how they changed their accent. They just tried to speak differently on purpose. So then the later generations would speak completely differently, which worked. That's the real reason why. And then we changed the way that we spell certain things too. So then instead of us seeing British people as some sort of like, oh, we're basically alike, you see them as like, nah, we're not alike at all. You talk completely different than me. You spell different than me. You just dress different than me. You're weird. Like, that is crazy that they did all that just so they didn't want to seem involved whatsoever and just seem completely different.
By 1790, acting British was socially dangerous. If you carried yourself like a duke, people assumed you wanted the redcoats back. They thought you were, a bit posh, perhaps bougie. Being practical, common, maybe even a bit plain was valuable both for the theme of equality as well as distance from Brittany. I just made that common noun up, but funny how you know exactly what I mean. Take a handshake, for example. In London, a bow was a physical map of who was above whom. But in Philadelphia, the handshake became the law of the land. It was a radical
law of the land. Everybody's equal. Ooh, everybody's equal. So acting bougie would just be like the fear of fucking weirdo. But shaking the hand does seem a lot better than bowing. Oh, because bowing's just like, bro, you're getting pitched. Handshake, pretty even, man. So I mean,
metaphorical middle finger to the class system. You look a man in the eye and grip his hand. A display that we overlook now, but directly respects the language from the Declaration against Great Britain that all men are created equal. Benjamin Franklin was really good at this. He would show up to important events dressed humbly, even showing up to the French court in a raccoon hat and plain brown suit. Everyone else was in powdered wigs and silk stockings, even the men. It seems unserious, but this representation of the American public as simple, somewhat rugged, was effective in securing French alliance against the.
So that's why that actually makes a lot of sense, because the British dress very fancy, powdered up wigs and all this bullshit. So to completely make ourselves seem not like them at all, because we're America, we have to completely we have no makeup, no wigs, no nothing, just completely ruggedy, just equality. It actually starting to make a lot of sense.
British. I have a whole video on why Benjamin Franklin wasn't a president and really was just a goofy guy, if you're interested. Now, you'd think this trend from Franklin of being distinctly rustic and specifically anti-posh to contrast against the British would have translated to other founding fathers and early presidents, but this just didn't happen, not for a while. In fact, for the first 40 years, US presidents were still Virginia gentlemen, if you will. They spoke with a refined, rhythmic cadence. Then came 1828, and this absolute menace of a man became the 7th president, Andrew Jackson.
He
He ran on
a lot of shit about Andrew Jackson, but I know nothing about him at all.
and embraced the persona of the regular man and woman. And while he wasn't the most morally upstanding figure, to say the least, he was dedicated to the average person. He may have been the only true common man